The Sannin is one of the most prominent groups in the Naruto verse. Their impacts on not only the characters but the world around them quite literally made the series as we know it today. So, you guys already know the deal. What would happen if we took the legendary 3 and swapped their main fights? However, Tsunade's main bout is pretty hard to ground, as it's just, could the other Sannin stack up with the Kage to some Madara who's holding back, and it's just not all that interesting. So today I'll just be discussing what if Jiraiya and Orochimaru swapped their 2 main fights. You guys seen the videos, you guys know the rules, so yeah, let's just jump straight in. But just before that though, please maybe consider subscribing or checking out a few more of my videos, and I also do have a video coming out with TG on what the Sannin actually did replace Sasuke during the Five Kage Summit. So yeah, check that out, but let's jump straight in. Beginning with the first contender being, what if Orochimaru was in Jiraiya's position whenever he was forced to battle off against the 6 Paths of Pain in the Rain Village Towers? So this is honestly quite interesting, considering Tsunade states that Jiraiya wouldn't have died of, if Orochimaru were to turn back sooner. Now, to see how Orochimaru fares in his place, I suppose we can begin with that statement, in which many people like to pull this away from any power relation whatsoever and just say that, well, if Orochimaru came back, Jiraiya wouldn't have went to Amigakure. And this interpretation just isn't all that likely. Jiraiya would still hold the same incentive to head for Amigakure on the intel mission, as that's all it was, an intel mission. So the statement could just mean he would have had Orochimaru join him, and they together would have either escaped prior to battling Pain, or would have been able to combat him and do better than Jiraiya alone, allowing for a retreat without Jiraiya feeling the need to prove himself. Many people hastily point to the game interaction in Naruto Storm Revolutions that Pain and Orochimaru have, which is neither canonical nor accurate, as Sage Mode Jiraiya was more than capable of keeping up with Pain, even outspeeding and cornering him a few times, with the chapter's synopsis statement claiming that, quote, now it's one-on-one and Jiraiya is on the road to victory, end quote, with Jiraiya's confidence boasting this as well, forcing Pain to use the Renegon Sensory a few times. With that, Orochimaru is considered to be equals with Jiraiya in the databook. However, Orochimaru is implied by Hiruzen and narratively shown to be by far the strongest Sannin base to base, with the chapter's synopsis statement during the 3-way deadlock stating outright, quote, both master and apprentice are outmatched, with Orochimaru stating that Jiraiya is also pathetic. So, you could probably assert that a full power Orochimaru is equals to Jiraiya's true power being his Sage Mode. This isn't all that unlikely. Orochimaru throughout the series has a lot of power fluctuations based upon the body in which he's in, and the body that he fought Old Man Hiruzen in is a considered prime of Orochimaru, and it was only as strong as Chunin exam Sasuke's body. So you could also say that it is still Orochimaru's full power, and it's not as hindering anymore, as he's probably gotten used to those sorts of nerfs. And there is some supposed guides stating that Jiraiya's ninjutsu kind of scared the other 5 Kage and shinobi from other nations, which would be comparable to Hiruzen's power, in which Orochimaru was able to combat that. Of course, you could maybe say that Jiraiya in Sage Mode is narratively closer to Hydra Orochimaru, in which a case could certainly be made, and you probably wouldn't be wrong in claiming that, but the problem with that, and with the Hydra as a whole, is while it may surpass Bates Orochimaru in strength, according to the 3rd data book, due to the overwhelming size increase and hence mass increase, in order for it to be proportionally greater, as in 1-for-1 greater, the speed amp required would just have to be ridiculous. So the Hydra is likely slower, or at best just as fast as base Orochimaru, just marginally stronger, and maybe it's relative to Sage Jiraiya in strength, but just not like speed. Whereas base Orochimaru is probably only contending Sage Jiraiya in speed. Even Pain himself during this bout states after seeing Sage Mode, quote, whether it's Jiraiya or Orochimaru, the Prodigal 3 all have unique powers. When Pain doesn't have any knowledge on the Hydra, but rather what base Orochimaru contributed to the Akatsuki over 10 years ago. To further support this idea, we have the anime profile guide stating bluntly that Orochimaru is the strongest Sannin, which is probably consistent with him beating Jiraiya in his departure of Konoha around the time that Pain would be basing this statement off of. Now, with that being said, apologies for the slight tangent about their scaling and relation, but of course I did need to get that out of the way. So Orochimaru won't just get throttled off start by any means. The White Serpent has many great techniques and an extremely varied arsenal that will come into account against Pain. Orochimaru's varied arsenal is likely the reason for his quarrels with Sasori and Deidara, 2 Akatsuki members, which he is implied to be stronger than from the first fan book, outright stating that Orochimaru is the most evil and powerful of all village enemies, as well as the 1 Decade 100 Ninja guide, going on to state that all village jutsu are known by the evil one who unravels them, meaning that he also literally has all 5 nature transformations, yin, yang, and one of the most iconic summons, so this probably isn't inconsistent that he knows most of the jutsu in Konoha. However, regardless of his arsenal, and while he may do better than Jiraiya, the first problem for Orochimaru is how Pain will try to kill both Orochimaru and Tsunade if they were in his place much faster than he ever would for Jiraiya, as Pain believes that Leaf Shinobi and the Will of Fire as a whole is a corrupt ideological system meant to justify the trampling of homes and the murder of children, a manifestation of the cycle of hatred, a manifestation and justification once used when his family were murdered right in front of him. However, with Jiraiya, Pain held back quite a bit in the earlier portions, as we can see Jiraiya's kick initially blitzes Pain, but before Pain is totally locked in with the Rinnegan Sensory, in which a few scenes later, he then reacts to this Jiraiya from a much more disadvantageous position. Now, Pain being more aggressive doesn't really matter as much here as it would against, Jiraiya, simply due to how Orochimaru in character uses his bodily substitution quite often. So many lethal attacks, probably won't be as lethal as they usually would, and kind of would get mitigated. Orochimaru uses this in character against Four Tails Naruto, a combatant greater than himself at the time, to literally survive being ripped in half through the organs. This supporting my previous claim of Orochimaru being able to handle more lethal opponents in combat because of this, as Four Tails Naruto left a hole in Jiraiya's chest, which would obviously come in handy here, as Jiraiya gets his arm ripped off by the Ashura Path, and Orochimaru faced the exact same situation against Four Tails Naruto, and simply just utilizes the body replacement and came back with a new arm. Now, I will say that Orochimaru simply would be forced to use other means, to kind of even the playing field, as in, speed, he's probably able to keep up, with each path, similar to Jiraiya, or at least maybe slightly worse if you think Jiraiya is still a little bit above in Sage Mode, but in regard to strength, Pain outclasses Orochimaru by a significant amount, and there's not much question there. Again, we know that Sage Jiraiya is probably closer to Hydra Orochimaru in strength, and the Preta Path straight up catches the Big Ball Rasengan, holding it in his hands and taking the force just prior to absorbing it, meaning that if anything, Orochimaru has virtually nothing to harm him and his arsenal is kind of null. There are other things like the Edo Tensei that would allow Orochimaru to use the wood style to potentially bind and suppress chakra, or even just allow the Edos to roam kind of about, whilst Orochimaru placed the cursed seals on the Pain bodies, locking their movements completely, such as how he did with Guru Yamato, a character who could best all the Five Kage and stalemate Hiruzen. So, while Orochimaru may seemingly do better than Pervy Sage, he doesn't have those big win cons such as Frog Song, a jutsu stated in the third databook to be the strongest genjutsu. This just means that if you think Orochimaru stays, then he loses, and eventually gets overwhelmed by the paths, very similar to Jiraiya, as the reason Jiraiya was ever, going to beat Pain was only due to him being unaware of the other paths, catching the three in, the ones he just battled prior in Frog Song. Orochimaru just doesn't have anything like that, or any win con like Frog Song, so all in all, Orochimaru wins technically if he leaves, but otherwise Pain should just overwhelm him. At worst, Pain could limit the chakra allocation and output all to Tendo, or just have the paths increase their sensory and vision, and when they dilate their pupils, for those who don't know, the Rinnegan functions more with advanced stages, such as when the pupils dilate, his vision becomes notably better. A difference large enough for Jiraiya initially blitzing the human path, to the human path then catching a full power Sage Mode punch from behind the back in smoke with his eyes closed. Yeah, that's a mouthful. Of course, the gap for this could be slightly more narrow, as the third databook states Jiraiya hardened his resolve in the initial moment, but regardless, it would still just aid the initial, already established gap between Orochimaru and Pain. There is also Konan, who really wouldn't be as nerved as she was at the initial idea of fighting her beloved master, with her probably trying to join the fray and take on Orochimaru to help aid Pain. However, I will say Orochimaru has many jutsu in his arsenal capable of subduing Konan and her dance of the Shikigami Jutsu, such as Orochimaru's wind style that's referred to as a literal hurricane in the databook that he uses on Team 7 back in the Forest of Death. Speaking of the Forest of Death, maybe you could just say that Orochimaru can fear hacks Konan, as he is capable of horrifically fear hacking a Genin Team 7, Kabuto, and even Kakashi, a likely greater threat than Konan, as Kakashi does skill blatantly just higher than the lower Akatsuki members and whatnot. And Let's be honest here, even the data book discusses how all of Hiruzen's knowledge isn't as impressive as, Orochimaru's sheer talent. As we know, Orochimaru knows all the jutsu and can perform them just as much as Hiruzen, if not maybe easier. Not just that, but Orochimaru also has the wave of snakes, or just the curse mark that can be used to be placed on Konan, which would obviously put Konan down for the count, but it would also force Orochimaru to take some attention away from the main threat being pain, which he just can't afford to do in this scenario. This meaning that no matter which way you really slice it, Orochimaru is a monster, but Pain just has so many advanced avenues to come out on top, with him also being able to spam Shinra Tensei as he did against Naruto, leading him to gain an advantage and just eventually, take a victory against Orochimaru. However, in the end, I think stylistically he does better than Jiraiya, just due to all the nuance and whatnot in his arsenal, and just the way he would fight in character, such as him being smarter than Jiraiya and possessing an ability to flow through inanimate objects like walls and whatnot, so he could just isolate the pains much easier than Jiraiya could, but would just get overwhelmed eventually. Hey yo, so before we delve into the pervy sage against Hiruzen, let me just say that most of you guys who watch my videos aren't subscribed, so please, if this isn't your first time hearing me, or maybe it is, and you like what you hear, consider subscribing or checking out more of my content, as I'm sure you'll find something to enjoy. Anyway, the video. Now, for Jiraiya, the Toad Sage, and how he would perform against Hiruzen, the professor, and his teacher, this matchup is honestly quite ironic, as the third data book lists who each character wants to battle, and Jiraiya wants to battle Hiruzen, in which Hiruzen here will not be suffering all of his mental afflictions as he did with Orochimaru, so similar to Pain in the last match, Hiruzen will be much more aggressive, as even Enma notes Hiruzen's passive behavior against Orochimaru with the thought of having to battle his own student, the young child who he adored more than his other students, and nurtured to be a talented shinobi, now looking into the face of a monster. So while he may be mentally nerfed, there's really no way to quantify what version of Hiruzen would be accurate to a non-mental nerfed one other than his Edo Tensei state. The reason I say this is Hiruzen's wrinkles under his eyes are a very consistent narrative measurement of age that I've never really heard any other creators seem to point out. During the Hiruzen vs. Orochimaru fight, Hiruzen has consistently 4 wrinkles and 5 wrinkles at some angles. During the Uchiha Massacre, however, through both the Itachi flashback in chapter 221, the Obito retelling chapter in 399, as well as Itachi's retelling chapter in 590, all display Hiruzen having 3 wrinkles during the massacre. Then, during the Ninetales attack, Hiruzen is shown to have dark hair and only have 2 wrinkles on every single page he shows up in. So, yeah, this idea is pretty consistent. During his Edo revival, though, he does keep the 4 wrinkles, signaling that Hiruzen, who was reanimated, was indeed brought back whenever he battled Orochimaru. This doesn't really do anything, however, as all he really does in this form is just react to the unstable Jubito, which is probably albeit more impressive than Tobirama's reaction feat from the same attack. It's still virtually unquantifiable. He does have a feat of stalemating a Guru Yamato who was beating all the 5 Kage and was going to win, with Shikamaru stating that if Hiruzen goes down, it's over. This idea doesn't really get contradicted whilst alive either, as we all know how Kabuto states that Hiruzen is the strongest of the 5 Kage, and the first Danbook stating that the top of Konoha is the top of all, meaning that the Okage is above all the other Okage generally, and this is no exception, but this doesn't really matter in a combatant sense like Jiraiya, as he was offered the title and turned it down many times. This aligns with Jiraiya also stating before he died that the reason he should get intel is that nobody else alive would get as far as he did against Pain, implying that all who would ever contest Pain, some no Akatsuki members or whatever, couldn't really get as far as Jiraiya would. This would include characters like Kakashi if you subscribe to this, so a full power Pain arc Kakashi being weaker than Jiraiya, which shouldn't really be super inconsistent, as Pain did do admittedly better against Kakashi, with Kakashi still placing Jiraiya on a higher tier than himself. Considering this is a pre-Pain arc, if you think base Rasen Shirk and Naruto and Kakashi are comparable, then this could be consistent with Storm Connections having Naruto retrain with Jiraiya after the Kakuzu arc, in which Naruto was unable to even leave a scar on base Jiraiya. It would also include characters like Sasuke from Jiraiya's knowledge, a threat who can kill a sick Orochimaru, in which heavy Sasuke does skill above Sasori, Data, and likely Konan anyway. However, with this being said, we've established that neither of these combatants are really fodder in any sense, but considering how Hiruzen Hiruzen may be comparable to a Sage Jiraiya, or somewhere in between there and a base, Jiraiya may need to activate Sage mode, especially to battle with Enma, Hiruzen's partner, who is able to clash with the Kusanagi blade and roar in an attempt to hurt Orochimaru, in which Hiruzen pulled him back in belief that he could. So Ma and Pa would be very helpful, just kind of dealing with Enma, with Ma and Pa being able to deal with a chameleon, a summon of pain, where Ma blitzed the chameleon and Pa sliced it in half with some high pressure water style. However, Enma is still stated in the fanbook to be the strongest of all animal summons, placing him above Ma and Pa, or at least individually above Ma and Pa, which doesn't really matter for Jiraiya, since when Jiraiya appears in Sage mode, the chapter synopsis statement hails them as the strongest summon combo, which means that as a unit, they are greater than Hiruzen and Enma, or Jiraiya is just so much greater than Hiruzen to make up for the difference that Enma is greater than the Toads by, making Sage Jiraiya the strongest summon combo, placing him just above Hiruzen and the Adamantine Noi. That enables, powerful combos as the anime profile guides state. This is just further solidifying that Sage Mode Jiraiya is likely slightly above Hiruzen in most physical stats. However, I probably wouldn't count Hiruzen out yet, as his Fire Style Dragon Flame Bombs are stated in the anime profile guides to be the strongest Fire Style Jutsu, with, with this being even greater than like Itachi's Fireball Jutsu, which is stated to be the hottest in the 10-year anniversary guide, as well as Jiraiya's Fireballs and whatnot, with it maybe even being, greater, or maybe being able to overpower the oil plus fire style combo from Sage Jiraiya. He also has many other fire style jutsu akin to his Sarutobi lineage. I mean, do I even need to say here that he has more diversity than Jiraiya? One thing you could bring up for Hiruzen having the strongest fire style and a main key point in Jiraiya's arsenal, if you've ever played the games, and it's Jiraiya's Great Flaming Rasengan. Now, this jutsu is never once shown or referenced a singular time in the manga or anime from what I'm aware of, but it is still talked about and shown a few times in the 10-year anniversary guide and the 1 Decade 100 Ninja guide, both being canon to the manga, displaying Jiraiya using a flaming Rasengan, which is similar to the Chidori in creation. However, this would allow Jiraiya to just have another layer of versatility, but in a bout like this, him using it is unlikely just based upon Hiruzen having that stronger fire style jutsu, as we already talked about. And I have heard cases for Enma being able to, clone himself, as there are a few implications of that. But for now, Hiruzen could probably take this extreme diff with Reaper Death Seal, but regardless, many jutsu like even Shadow Clones take away from Hiruzen's lifespan, so stamina is the biggest problem here, in which Jiraiya isn't really lacking in that category, so in the end, for Jiraiya versus Hiruzen, I think it can go either way, extreme diff, just depending on, what you grant each fighter in the scenario, but I feel like there's a lot of meat to this discussion, to be put simply, but if I had to pick one, I think Jiraiya is the safer pick, and would do slightly better than Orochimaru. All in all, I figured this discussion was interesting and had a lot of potential fun, and I figured you guys would enjoy this discussion, as there truly is, again, a lot of nuance to it, and not only to this discussion, to be honest, but to the Sannin as a whole. And me and my boy TG were chopping it up with a bunch of points for a video to come out on his channel pretty soon, pretty much analyzing just how the Sannin would fare in the Five Kage Summit. So if that does sound interesting, or maybe you just enjoy the Sannin or points brought up here, would highly recommend checking that video out if it's not already out. Anyway, there's a lot more to be brought up, and I'm on it. So yeah, as always, love you guys.